Have you ever watched someone celebrate, only to realize their victory lasted less than 5 minutes? My son believed he had taken everything. My home, my company, my savings, even my dignity. He looked me in the eyes and said, "Mom, it's over." I walked out carrying one small box. Everyone thought I had lost, but they didn't know. I had made one phone call, and 30 minutes later, my lawyer walked into the boardroom holding a single envelope. What happened next changed my son's life forever. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, would you forgive your child after a betrayal like this? Now, my name is Margaret Carter. I'm 65 years old. For 40 years, my husband Robert and I built Carter Industries from a tiny garage workshop into one of the largest manufacturing companies in our state. Nothing came easily. There were years when we couldn't even afford vacations. Every dollar went back into the business, not for ourselves, but for our only son, Daniel. When Robert passed away 5 years ago, Daniel promised he'd take care of me. At first, he kept that promise. He visited every weekend, called every night, told everyone, "My mom is the heart of this company." I believed him. Slowly, things began changing. Daniel hired new executives, replaced longtime employees, canceled meetings I had always attended. Whenever I questioned him, he smiled. "Mom, this is how modern business works." I trusted him. Until one Monday morning, when my office door wouldn't open, my key card flashed red. Access denied. I thought it was a technical problem. Then security walked toward me. "Mrs. Carter, we've been instructed not to allow you upstairs." I laughed. There must be a mistake. The guard looked uncomfortable. "I'm sorry." Those instructions came directly from Mr. Daniel Carter. My own son had locked me out. 20 minutes later, Daniel walked into the lobby. Expensive suit, luxury watch, confident smile. "Mom, I told you it was time to step aside." I stared at him. "This company belongs to both of us." He slowly handed me a folder. Inside were documents claiming I had transferred my ownership shares to him. Every page carried my signature, except I had never signed them. My hands started shaking. "This isn't my signature." Daniel simply smiled. "Can you prove it?" For the first time in my life, I realized the greatest threat to everything I'd built was my own son. I stood in the lobby, still holding those documents. Every page carried my name. Every page carried a signature. That wasn't mine. I looked up at Daniel. "Why?" He didn't even hesitate. "Because you would have never stepped aside. And this company needs someone willing to make hard decisions." I could barely recognize him. This wasn't the little boy I had raised. This was a stranger. He walked toward the elevator. Before the doors closed, he turned around one last time. "Oh, the board meeting starts in 30 minutes. They're voting me in as permanent CEO. You won't be attending." The elevator doors shut. And just like that, I was left standing alone. I walked outside. Rain had started falling. Employees passed by without speaking. Some looked ashamed. Others looked afraid. No one wanted to get involved. I sat on a bench across the street. My phone buzzed. It was an old friend. Linda. She had worked with my husband for over 25 years. "Margaret, I just heard what happened. Are you okay?" I forced a smile. "I'll survive." She lowered her voice. "Robert always said, if anything ever happens to the company, call Michael immediately." Michael, our family lawyer. My heart skipped a beat. I had almost forgotten. 3 years before Robert passed away, he insisted on updating every legal document connected to the company. At the time, I thought he was simply being careful. Now, I wondered if he had seen something coming. Without wasting another second, I dialed Michael Harrison's number. He answered after the first ring. "Margaret, I've been expecting your call." His words stunned me. "You knew?" "I didn't know when." But Robert made me promise something. If you ever called saying Daniel had taken control, I was to bring one sealed file to the board. My hands began to shake. What file? He paused. The one Daniel doesn't know exists. 20 minutes later, Michael arrived carrying a black leather briefcase. He looked calm, confident, as if he already knew how this story would end. He opened the briefcase just enough for me to see. A sealed envelope, and one blue legal folder. Everything we need, he said quietly, is right here. I looked at him. Can we still save the company? Michael smiled. Margaret, your husband planned for every possibility. He trusted people, but he trusted the law even more. For the first time that day, I felt hope. Together, we walked toward Carter Industries. Inside, the board meeting had already begun. Daniel was standing at the head of the table, giving his victory speech. He had no idea. The truth was about to walk through the door. The boardroom was silent. Daniel stood at the head of the long oak table. Behind him, a giant screen displayed one sentence. New CEO, Daniel Carter. The board members applauded. Daniel smiled proudly. Ladies and gentlemen, today marks the beginning of a new era. My mother has officially transferred all ownership to me. He lifted the forged documents into the air. This company is finally mine. Several executives nodded. One even congratulated him. Then, the boardroom door slowly opened. Everyone turned. A tall man in a navy blue suit walked inside carrying a black leather briefcase. Daniel frowned. This meeting is private. The man smiled calmly. My name is Michael Harrison. I've been Carter Industries legal counsel for 32 years. The room immediately fell silent. Daniel forced a laugh. You're too late. The paperwork is already signed. Michael walked to the center of the room. Without saying another word, he placed his briefcase on the table. Click. The locks opened. He removed a sealed envelope. Across the front, in my late husband's handwriting, were the words, to be opened only if anyone attempts to take control of Carter Industries through deception. My heart began racing. Daniel's confident smile slowly disappeared. Michael carefully broke the seal. Inside were two documents. The first, a notarized letter from my husband. The second, a confidential shareholder agreement. Michael began reading. If you're hearing this letter, it means someone has placed power above family. The room became completely silent. Daniel whispered, What is this? Michael continued. 5 years ago, Robert Carter transferred Margaret's voting shares into a protected family trust. He looked around the room. The trust clearly states, no transfer of Margaret Carter's ownership can ever become legally valid without two signatures. A board member leaned forward. Which two? Michael answered calmly. Margaret Carter's and mine. Daniel grabbed the forged documents. He flipped through every page. His hands started trembling. My signature was there, but Michael's signature wasn't. His face turned pale. Michael wasn't finished. He placed another report on the table. This morning, a forensic handwriting examiner completed this analysis. He looked directly at Daniel. The signatures claiming to belong to Margaret Carter are forgeries. A gasp echoed through the room. The chairman slowly stood up. Daniel, did you forge these documents? Daniel opened his mouth, but no words came out. The board members looked at each other in disbelief. One by one, they pushed the forged documents away. The chairman spoke firmly. This meeting is suspended. Effective immediately. Daniel Carter is removed from all executive authority pending investigation. At that exact moment, there was another knock at the boardroom door. Two investigators stepped inside. One held a folder. Mr. Daniel Carter? We need to speak with you regarding allegations of corporate fraud, document forgery, and attempted theft. Daniel slowly looked at me. For the first time, there was no arrogance, no confidence, only regret. His voice barely escaped. Mom, what have I done? The investigator stood quietly by the door. No one spoke. The boardroom that had been filled with applause just minutes earlier was now completely silent. Daniel slowly looked around the room. Every board member avoided his eyes. The executives who had praised him now sat with their heads down. The chairman finally broke the silence. "Mr. Carter, until this investigation is complete, you are suspended from all duties." Daniel didn't argue. He couldn't. Everything he had built on lies had collapsed. As the investigators escorted him toward the door, he stopped, turned around, and looked directly at me. His voice trembled. "Mom, I'm sorry." The room remained silent. I slowly walked toward him. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I quietly asked, "Why?" Tears filled his eyes. I was desperate. The company had lost millions. I made risky investments. I borrowed money I couldn't repay. I thought if I owned everything, I could save it. But every lie forced me to tell another. And before I knew it, I had become someone Dad would never recognize. 3 months later, the investigation was complete. The forensic reports confirmed the signatures had been forged. Daniel admitted everything. He accepted responsibility. Because he cooperated fully, repaid as much of the financial loss as he could, and had no previous criminal record. The court imposed probation, financial penalties, and community service instead of prison. The company survived. The board asked me to return as chairwoman. I accepted, but only on one condition. We will rebuild this company with honesty. No shortcuts, no exceptions. The board unanimously agreed. One rainy evening, there was a knock at my front door. When I opened it, Daniel was standing there. No tailored suit, no expensive watch, no luxury car, just a simple jacket and tears in his eyes. He held a small wooden box. Inside were my office keys, the executive access card, and one handwritten letter. I unfolded it. It read, "Mom." I thought success meant owning everything. Dad was right. Success means becoming someone your family can be proud of. I know I can't erase what I did. But if you'll let me, I'll spend the rest of my life earning back your trust. A tear rolled down my cheek. I looked at my son, not the executive, not the man who betrayed me, just the little boy who had once held my hand on his first day of school. I stepped aside. "Come in." He hesitated. "I don't deserve that." I smiled gently. "No, you don't. But everyone deserves the chance to become better than their worst mistake." Daniel walked inside. For the first time in years, we sat together without talking about business. We talked about family, about Robert, about the choices that had brought us to this moment. A year later, Carter Industries was stronger than ever. Not because profits had increased, but because trust had returned. Daniel never asked for his old position back. Instead, he started over. He worked for a nonprofit organization, helping young entrepreneurs learn about ethics and responsible leadership. Whenever someone asked why he had chosen that path, he smiled and said, "Because I learned the hard way that you can rebuild a business, but rebuilding trust takes much longer. Sometimes, life doesn't test us by what we can gain. It tests us by what we're willing to sacrifice for power. Money can disappear. Companies can fail. Titles can be taken away. But integrity, once lost, can only be restored through honesty, humility, and time." As I locked my office one final evening, I looked at the family photo on my desk. Robert's smile reminded me of something he used to say. The greatest inheritance you can leave your child isn't wealth. It's character. It took Daniel losing everything to finally understand what his father had meant. And in the end, that lesson was worth far more than the company.